Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MetalCast from Metal Coffee Shop. My name is Karen Edwards, and today's episode, we are going to be talking about tool organization and solutions and storage. And boy, we have a great guest here today, Roger Brouard, founder of Veto Pro Pac, which is now part of the Malco Group. Roger, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Karen. Good to be here.
Yeah, we're great to have you. The Veto Pro Pac, as I mentioned, is now part of Malco Group. So maybe you can start by, there may be folks out there that don't know who you are and who Veto Pro Pac is. So could you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your background?
Sure. Yeah, Veto Pro Pac tool bags basically came out of my frustration with soft side tool bags. I have a fine arts degree from the University of Connecticut. I majored in sculpture. And then one summer I worked on a framing crew, framing apartment buildings. And that was before nail guns. That was all hand framing. And then another summer I worked for a roofer. And then when I graduated, I got a job up in Maine building wooden lobster boats, which was an incredible opportunity because building a lobster boat is very technical. It's like, how do you make a zucchini out of wood? Because nothing's straight, level, or plumb. So that was a, for getting into the trades, you could not get a more technical experience than building a wooden boat. And so I did that for 3 years, and then I needed to make more money. I was getting paid $2.75 an hour. And the guy that I worked for is known up and down the coast of Maine. His name was Arno Day, and he's no longer around. But he wanted me to carry on the tradition, but he didn't have a mortgage. He lived in his family homestead, and so he charged very cheap wages for building these lobster boats, and I moved on to doing renovation and building houses. And this is all up on Deer Isle. And then I did that for about 5 years. Then I got in with the Carpenters Union out of Bangor. I joined that. That was $6.75 an hour. And that was all hard hat forming concrete, building a sewage treatment plant on the Penobscot River. But during that period in Maine, I grew up in Connecticut in the suburbs, and I wanted to move to Maine to get away from the suburbs and be on the coast of Maine. I'm a saltwater guy, and I love the culture of working and living on the coast of Maine. And I made all my toolboxes out of wood, and I actually enjoyed making them. And then after living in Maine for 10 years, I moved to New York City to pursue my art career, but still worked as a carpenter in New York City, which was really challenging. Parking tickets, loading all the materials on top of elevators, and squeezing onto a subway with one of my wooden toolboxes. Having they were always 24 inches on the inside for a 2-foot level, or the 24-inch leg of a framing square, and jabbing somebody with a framing square, squeezing onto the subway, you get shot.
Yeah, you do.
it's pretty challenging. So I actually, after dealing with that, I went down to Canal Street, and there was an industrial hardware store, and this would have been 1980. And then to see if I could find a soft side tool bag. And there were not a lot on the market. And the one that I got was a 10-ounce cotton canvas that had a metal frame with 2 leather handles and then 2 leather straps. So it just buckled together to close it. But there were no internal pockets. It was just a horizontal wrestling match of all your tools. And then when you dig into it, you get jabbed by a sharp chisel, or your nice sharp chisel would rub up against a rat's tail file, and you'd nick the edge of your nice sharp chisel, or you'd dump everything on the ground and dig through it and find what you needed and put everything back. So it was just an exercise of aggravation and frustration to get a needed hand tool.
Right.
And after living in New York City for about 6 years, I'd moved out to Connecticut, Darien, Connecticut, where I grew up. And in the mid 90s, it was probably around it was probably around 1996, 97. A configuration came out called the Bucket Boss. And a lot of guys are familiar with that configuration because there's a lot of empty joint compound buckets and dumpsters after guys finish all the taping of the sheetrock.
Right.
And so the guy came up with an idea of putting this sleeve around a 5-gallon bucket with the vertical tiered pockets on the outside. But there were shortcomings to that. I tried it. It was great because you could see all your tools, but they were on a round bucket. So the tools would rub against your leg.
Yeah.
And then the little plastic handle, it was awkward. It wasn't close to your body ergonomically. And one time a dog ran out in front of me. I hit the brake really hard and it flipped over in the back of my truck. And it was like an explosion in a hardware store.
Right.
So one Saturday, I took all the tools out of it, the pockets, took it off the bucket, laid it on my workbench. And when it was flattened out, it was about 16 inches wide. And I took some leftover 1/4-inch Lawan plywood and ripped it 16 inches wide by about 18 inches long. And then jigsawed a radius on top and then jigsawed out a slot and duct taped some foam pipe insulation to the handle to replicate a grip, and then slid the vertical tiered pockets up on the flat panel. And so now all the vertical tiered pockets were on a flat panel rather than on a round bucket. And this, to me, this was the aha moment. I'm saying this is the way a tool bag should be, because all the vertical tiered pockets are on a flat panel. It's going to be ergonomic to your body, and you have you could potentially have a nice beefy grip that would be relevant to a loaded tool bag rather than webbed handles or fabric handles. And then there was an American company called Plano, and it's an injection molding company. And they make injection molding fishing tackle boxes, but they were the first ones to come out with a plastic base on a soft side tool bag. And I bought it. It was a gate mouse style bag, but the plastic was very thin. The bottom was warped, and it did not return up on the sides very high. It came up about 3/4 inch, but it was a plastic bottom. Mm-hmm. So I cut the handles out and the zippers out and left about 4 inches of fabric stitched to the plastic base and dropped this vertical panel into it and pop riveted it to it. And now it had a base. And to me, a plastic base solved 3 situations. Number 1, it gave a fabric tool bag moisture protection. Number 2, it gave it wear and tear protection, so it wouldn't tear up the fabric. And then number 3, it gave stability to a loaded tool bag.
Right.
And so this was 1998. And, this to me this is the way it should be. And that's how it started.
Wow. What a great story. I would like to think that your fine arts and sculpting background played a role in helping you create that prototype, that what you thought a bag should be, right? That creative background.
Yes, it definitely did, Karen, because, having the construction experience going from, if you go from 1 to 10, on a scale from 1 to 10, like boat building and finished carpenters, that's like, 1 to 5. These guys are more particular and careful about their work. It's in their nature because that work. Whereas guys that work on framing crews, these guys are more brutal. These guys are animals, and I've worked both ways.
So you can say that because you've done it, right?
Yeah, I've worked with those guys. I know what those guys are like, And so it's like having that worked in the full spectrum from 1 to 10. But then yet having a fine arts background, it did 2 things. Number 1, I wanted to make the bag brutally tough. These guys are, pretty brutal on their tools and things. So making the bag as tough as could be, using heavy duty fabrics and materials. And then number 2, the design of it. I wanted it to have a serious, rugged, but yet classy look to the bag. And, the colors that I chose, they're mostly earth tones. So that, like a, good leather saddle that gets broken in, I wanted the bags to have that look too. So, job sites are dirty and dusty. So the first Veto bag was brown with black and gray webbing trim, and then highlighted by the logo, which was kind of a burnt orange. So it was just a little speck of that burnt orange in the logo to pop with the earth tones of the bag. And so it's just the alchemy of my fine arts experience, and then but yet having worked in the full spectrum in the field of wood, from building wooden boats to building houses.
Right.
And it all came together with that, and designing the bag. And I just knew it was better than any tool bag on the market, and I knew that it would sell. Right. So I just did everything I could to get manufacturing. But first I had to get the patents, which that was another.
Right. That takes a lot of time to do that. I'm curious. I always like to know about the name. Why did you name it Veto?
That's a great question, Karen. And some people never ask that. Who's that? Your Uncle Veto design? I said, no, it's not VITO. It's VETO.
It's no.
Yeah. So it was just one morning, when my head was clear early in the morning, staring at the ceiling when I was just waking up. And I was going to call it Black Oak Bags or Black Bear Bags, one of these testosterone loaded names. But I just kept thinking, basically what was unique about it, it oriented all the tools vertically. So I'm going like, okay, VETO could represent vertical tool, and then O for organization or orientation. So shorten it to Veto for vertical tool orientation or vertical tool organization. And then Pro stands for protected. And then Pac means packed and ready to go to work. So I shortened it to Veto Pro Pac. And then I figured I'd get an extra marketing bump when, Congress vetoes this bill. And, it's quirky. There's a little poetry to it. And so it's just like, I'm going to call it Veto Pro Pac. And that's where the name comes from. But, it's funny. Occasionally people ask me, where's that name come from? But a lot of people do not inquire about that.
Wow. So how did the Malco Group, how did that come to be, that you're now part of them?
Well, we had been working with Aspen Pump over in the UK. They started building distribution for us in UK, and then eventually into Europe and into Australia and New Zealand. And so we worked with them for a while. And, I'd been over there many times with CEO Adrian Thompson and their logistic guy, Andrew Watkin, and had a lot of fun with those guys and really got to know them. And so, they were kind of after Veto for quite some while, but I didn't want to sell. I just wanted to keep building the value of the business. There are a lot more bags that I wanted to bring to the market and so forth. So, but eventually, they kind of, the market was slow over in Europe, and they wanted a chunk of the U.S. market. And so they, had purchased Malco to form Malco Group USA. And then, then we got bought by Malco. To join in the intention of breaking into the U.S. market. So that's basically how that started or came about.
It makes sense, especially with Malco having all the line of tools that they make and sell, and so it's kind of the perfect pairing.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and they're good quality tools too.
So are there tell me about the different types of bags. Are they specific for different trades, different
Yeah,
colors? What are the options?
yeah, that's it, Karen. I mean, we have first I launched it in residential construction because that's what I did. And so all my trade shows were residential construction trade shows. But when the recession hit in 2008, people tightened their belts and, weren't doing a new kitchen or putting a new roof on or putting an addition on. So I had full distribution throughout the U.S. In being sold. Veto is being sold in lumber yards and contractor supply houses. And so HVAC techs started reaching out to us saying that they really liked our bags, but that the pockets were not big enough to accommodate their meters, like their multimeters and testers and so forth. And as a carpenter, I never used multimeters or testers. And so there was a local heating and cooling contractor here in Westport, Connecticut, the next town over, and I reached out to them, Sam Galt Energy, and asked them how many techs they have, and he said, well, we got about 24 in gas, oil, and cooling. And I said, I have a tool bag company here next town over, and I would like to meet with your techs and see what bags they use and pick a bag from my lineup and then load it up and then work with them for a month. And I want to go out, I'll pick 2 or 3 guys a week and go out on service calls with them. So that's what I did. And I would go out, meet them, at 7 in the morning and go out on service calls with the heating and cooling techs and got to understand how they work. And I did that for, it was probably a month and a half. And then I went to China and spent about 6 weeks and then designed the whole tech series. And basically took like the Model LC and turned that into the Tech LC, and the XL turned that into the Tech XL. And then did an XLT, which is a laptop tool bag, and then did an LT, which is a straight laptop bag, and then did the MB, the meter bag, and then the TP3, which was a tool pouch. So I changed the body colors to black to differentiate, and then redesigned the handle to accommodate clipping the shoulder strap into the clip. So I had to invest in the new toolings for the handles, and basically kept the tool pockets on the front of the bag the same, but on the back, the lower pockets, which are always 4 inches wide, had those made out of neoprene, which is stretchy. So that would accommodate any kind of meter that these guys would use. Designing all those bags after 6 weeks of being in China right through Christmas. That was depressing. Came home and placed the PO. And then we did a heating and cooling trade show down in Baltimore. And these heating and cooling reps came by and, wow, these are cool bags. How are you building distribution into heating and cooling? And say, well, we're really not. We're just launching into that. Most of our bags were in the construction market and remodeling. And so they were interested in carrying the line. We put together an agreement and started working with them. They launched it into the Mid-Atlantic, and then they came up and back and they said, we could build you a whole rep network in the heating and cooling market of AAA rated net groups and build full distribution into the U.S. market. And so that's what we did. And that's how we got into the heating and cooling market. But then on the side, I started working with the fire department and designing bags for the fire department. Being a boat builder, I was a member of the Mystic Seaport up in Mystic, Connecticut for years. And I designed a line of marine bags, and I reached out to the Seaport asking them how many shipwrights they have, and they had about 20. And so in the fall, they're always looking for money for building projects. And I said to myself, well, the shipwrights never see that. I'll donate tool bags. So I donated tool bags to the shipwrights.
Nice.
And then that was it. And so there are specific bags that we go into, and the deeper we dive into the heating and cooling market, which is our strongest market, and it's recession proof too, unlike the building trades too. So that's been a very strong market for us. So that's most of our energy has gone into designing bags for the heating and cooling market.
I love that you went and spent that time with the technicians and went on the service calls with them and really understood what they were dealing with and what their challenges were. Because, manufacturers that listen to the end user and take that feedback and integrate it into their products always seem to do very, very well. And it sounds like that's exactly what's happening here, Roger.
Yeah, that Karen, it was great because I understand the culture of the construction world, and to be with these guys and go out in the field, and I'll grab their tool bag and carry it for them. On that too. They didn't ask me; I just grabbed it on my own and carry it for them.
Right.
And so this gave me a good understanding of what they do. And it's like the boat builder bags or the marine bags. After I donated the bags, and I was already working on the marine bags. I just started working on those, and I know what to design for a boat builder's bag because that's what I did. And for commercial fishermen, like lobster fishermen, I made these totes for lobster fishermen that need to carry their lunch, their gloves, a wool cap when they go to the boat. And so those things. But one of the bags that I wanted to design specifically in the marine bags was the rigger's bag. And for a lot of guys don't know what that is. That a guy that does boat rigging is for all the riggings. They're called shrouds and stays that hold up a mast. And the head rigger at the Mystic Seaport, they rebuilt the Mayflower II, which was built over in the UK between 1955 and 1957, sailed across the ocean, and it had been permanently tied up to the wharf in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is where the Pilgrims first land. And it no longer could sail, so they dragged it with the tugboat down to Mystic Seaport, put it up on the hard, and spent 5 years rebuilding it. All new frames, all new planking. And the head rigger that was doing the new re-rigging, because the boat really didn't sail that well, he had to redesign it and replicate. And when they were making rigging back in the day, it was made out of cotton and hemp, which would rot. So it would get coated with pine tar. Pine tar is made out of sap, and it kind of blackens all the hemp and cotton ropes. So all the old stay, shroud, ratlins on these old square rig boats was basically black over time. And then Matt, working with New England Ropes, using synthetic rope, had them use dyes to make the synthetic ropes look like old, but he re-rigged everything. So he can do historical rigging, but he can do contemporary yacht rigging. So it's amazing what he knows.
Wow.
And so I got his phone number, called him up, and because there was a rigger's bag on the market, but it really was a joke. And I called him up and he said, "Hey, Roger." I said, "Hey, Matt, it's Roger from Veto Pro Pac." He goes, "Oh, Roger, we love your bags you donated to us." And he said, "I'm using a Home Cheapo bag," which is, they call that for a Home Depot bag, Husky line. And he said, "I've turned that into a rigger's bag." And I said, "I want to pick your brain and design a rigger's bag." So I spent 2 years working with him and designed the rigger's bag, the Veto's rigger bag. And that is an intense bag. Yeah. And so that was just one specific bag that I worked with him. And that was 2 years in development. But we have a lot of electricians and plumbers that use that bag. So, right. It's designed for hardcore boat rigger guys, which are, the coast of Maine is still hardcore boat building going on up there. So they sold pretty solidly into the boat building market up on the coast of Maine.
So you guys, I want to make sure we have enough time to touch on your newest line, which is EVO.
Yep.
Can you tell me about that and what inspired that and what it's designed to do?
That the Evo system was a system to offer ability to customize and a lot more opportunities. It's a new kind of a clip that allows to clip into various platforms that get attached to different bags. It's magnetic. So the guys that are servicing condenser units and so forth, once they open up the clip, they can just stick it right to the metal casing of a condenser unit. So it gives quick and easy access to a small tool pouch. So there are a variety of tool pouches that can stick to the Evo bags that have the clip platform. So it just basically allows for much more customization and adaptability for guys working in the field so they can work smarter and more efficiently. And that was the basic intention for the whole Evo system.
Wow. And what's the feedback been?
It's been very positive. We did the big AHR show, and It was great there because, guys coming in, seeing it for the first time. And we were luckily, our booth was right next to an electrical panel, which was perfect, which was made out of metal. Right. And so everybody's slamming them against the metal panel, loading them up with tools because everybody's saying, is it going to hold? And we'd load it up with hand tools to give it some weight. And, sticking them to the metal panel there to test them out, too. So we got a lot of positive feedback at the AHR show in Vegas last month on that.
Wow. Yeah, it's great because, this whole story I love from, being having your tools in the right place and organized. One, it's going to help them last longer. Like you mentioned, when they're dumped in the bag and they're banging up against each other. Yeah. But it's going to help contractors be more efficient too, and more productive and not waste time digging around for what they need.
Well, that was the whole thing that made Veto happen. It's just like transitioning from wooden boxes to a soft side bag, especially working in an urban environment. The bags that were out there, they were not designed by a tradesman.
Right.
And most of the tool bags, I think Veto is the only tool bag company that everybody knows there's a tradesman behind it. And that's why the bags are what they are. Because most of these bags have been designed by designers who never seriously swung a hammer in their life. And there's a disconnect.
That's true.
And so it's And I just knew it would sell. And when I first launched the Model XL, which was in Providence, Rhode Island, at the JLC Live, that was put on by the Journal of Light Construction. It was kind of the blue-collar rag. It was printed on newsprint. And Fine Home Building was the four-color, beautiful home building renovation magazine.
That show still exists, that JLC Live. Yeah.
It does. Yeah. It does. And that's where I launched Veto. And the Providence, the home show. And, I launched it at $119.95. Everybody said, you're crazy. Nobody's going to pay $120 for a tool bag. And I sold 48 bags at that show.
Wow.
And so I think it really resonated that guys knew that the guy that designed it had 30 years of pounding nails and making sawdust under his belt, from building wooden lobster boats to hardcore framing and, hard hat form of concrete construction. And so that's really all that came together to make Veto what it was. The design, number one, first the design of it, and then the functionality that's designed into it, and then backed up by the quality. I love quality, and so it was both those coming together: the function and the quality of the product and the look. It's because it looked so different. All the other bags, we look at the other bags, they're cheap, and most of them are 600 denier polyester. When I launched the XL construction series, those are 1,800 denier polyester, which is 3 times as rugged as 600D polyester.
So now that we have everybody excited about the bags, where do they get the bags?
Well, we're probably in over, I'd say probably, I don't know, up to 7,000 or 8,000 heating, cooling supply house.
Okay.
So heating and cooling supply houses, that's they are available there. We're starting what we call Veto superstores. And these are stores that carry more than just 4 or 5 different bags. These guys have to invest in almost a whole line. And those are taking off. We just started with that. There's one up in Northern California. I was on Instagram the other day, and one of the stores popped up, and the video was just going through the store and showing all the tons of Veto bags. I'm going like, finally, because so many guys go out there, and the stores don't stock them. And so it's like, and we always say, if you don't have it on the shelf, you're not going to sell it. You got to have them on the shelf. And, and Veto bags, they are expensive, but the value proposition is there. You pay for it, and it comes with a 5-year warranty. You got to take care of it. And it's the golden rule is you take care of a tool, take care of you. And the tool bag is a tool. It helps you store, organize, and transport your hand tools in a very efficient, functional manner. And we get a lot of feedback that guys will say, if they go to a customer's house, the customers will compliment them on the bag, how professional the bag looks.
That's nice. Yeah.
It is, because then it makes the customers feel like this guy's not a hack showing up with a 5-gallon bucket and his tools all flopping around with the Bavarian cream donut stuck to the handle of a socket wrench. So it gives the customer a sense of security knowing that this guy cares about his craft, because when the bags open up, you can see all the tools are organized and stored vertically for quick and easy access.
Yeah.
So it really has resonated in the market. But, back in March of 2003, it's like that's when it was just, nobody knew about it.
Right.
And so it took off. In fact, a quick little side story. After I had 6 bags doing that JLC Live, because I would do all 5 shows. The one in Providence, there'd be one in Chicago, Minneapolis, or Cincinnati, one up in Portland or Seattle, and one down in Anaheim or Long Beach. And I would do all 5. I did that for years. But at the Providence show, setting up on a Thursday, a guy came over, and an older gentleman with gray hair, and said, well, what are the Veto Pro Pac tool bags? And I said, it's a tool bag company I started and designed these. He said, wow, these are beautiful. What's the price point? And I told him the price point. He said, it's a premium brand then. And I said, well, maybe. And so he came back the next day and he said, hi, Roger, my name's Gary Simmons. And I'm the principal rep for Stabila Levels. Stabila Levels are high-end German level, and they came on the scene, and they were like 3 times the price of the MD Levels, which were from Canada. And they were powder-coated yellow. They had nice rounded edges. The profile was basically an extruded rectangular tube, whereas the MD Levels were basically the shape of an I-beam. And the corners are so sharp, you have to take a flat file and knock the edges off. And if a 6-foot jam level leaning against the wall, if somebody knocked it over, it would knock the vials out, and it'd take a half an hour to reset the vials. Whereas the Stabila vials were factory set, and they would not knock out. So he said, you're going to have a challenge building distribution with these. How are you building distribution? I said, well, I'm just starting to work with some reps in New England. And he gave me his list. He said, you have a premium brand here, and you're going to have a challenge with the price point, getting these into distribution. You're going to get a lot of pushback because of the price point. He said, my reps are used to that. I will help you build a whole rep network throughout the U.S. and build distribution into the lumberyards and contractor supply houses. And I worked with them for 2 years and had full distribution with Stabila reps, and they sold extension cords, but everything that they sold were premium brands. So these reps were used to the pushback when dealers would say, well, nobody's going to pay, $225 for a tool bag. And so that was how I built distribution.
Very cool. How, you meet someone at an event in this industry, you make that connection and they end up helping each other. And that's, with the trades and construction and all of this, is all about. You see that happen a lot. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Wow, Roger, we are at the end of our time, but this was just super interesting to hear your story and hear the story of Veto Pro Pac. And it just, you've done great things, and congratulations on being where you are today.
Well, thank you very much, Karen. And, if I was still in the design department, I would be working on a bag for roofers and a pair of overalls that roofers would use, because I did a lot of roofing too.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Maybe someone's listening in the design department for you, and they'll take that on. So for those of you who are listening out there, the Malco Group has full directories on Roofers Coffee Shop, Metal Coffee Shop. You can find information about them there, and Veto Pro Pac, because we want you to check it out. And thanks for listening to this episode of MetalCast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, because we want to see you on a future episode. See you next time. Bye.